Hello and welcome to episode one of Hello and welcome to episode one of the Andrew Murnane podcast. Apologies for the name. I was going to call it Nothing Matters, but someone already has that name on Spotify podcast. So being lame, going with my name for now. Probably going to change it at some point. So if you have any name suggestions, please let me know. Starting this podcast because a lot of people, especially on TikTok, have requested that I start one, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. So finally, pulling the trigger on it and getting going. So I bought a microphone on Amazon for $26. So hopefully the sound quality is decent. But basically, this podcast is just going to be a way for me to have longer conversations about the things I talk about on TikTok for the most part. Probably going to be like mental health focused, but also incorporate some physical health, some fitness and nutrition stuff, life, money, saving money, working, all sorts of things. It's my podcast, so I can talk about whatever the fuck I want. And apologies in advance, I'm probably going to curse a decent amount. I don't know if that's not beneficial to me on these podcasts. Maybe it's probably better if I keep it clean, but whatever. Fuck it. So this episode is basically just going to be an intro, talk about my life, some of the things that I've been through, ups and downs, some of the reasons that I think a certain way. Going to keep it relatively short though. I'll get into some of these topics in more detail in other episodes. So this is more so going to be a higher level, just walking through my life. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, just outside Boston, Massachusetts, in Newton Wellesley Hospital. My parents are from New York and New Jersey. They had moved to Boston. That's where they were working when I was born. Shortly after I was born, only a few months later, my dad got a job in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So that is where they moved, and that is where I grew up. So I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, the western suburbs. In Wayzata is the town, if you're familiar with the area. I grew up there. It was a very nice place to grow up. I really enjoyed it. A lot of really good people. Still have some very good friends from growing up there. Growing up when I was younger, just played a ton of sports, was very active. When I was younger, let's see, I played golf, tennis, hockey, baseball, football. I was on swim team, did track for a little bit. A lot of things. So I really enjoyed it. I have zero complaints about my childhood. And then jumping ahead, from kindergarten through fourth grade, I went to the local public school. Fifth grade through ninth grade, I went to a private Catholic school, very conservative Catholic school, and then wasn't crazy about high school there. So after freshman year, I left to the school my sister was going to, called Benilde St. Margaret's, which I really enjoyed. It was also a private Catholic school, but not nearly as conservative as the previous school I was at. So really enjoyed it. Had a lot of good friends at all of the schools that I went to growing up, but really enjoyed Benilde St. Margaret's. And then, so when I was a sophomore in high school, I had played baseball. So in high school, I played hockey, baseball, and football. Those were kind of the main sports that I stuck to. And when I was a sophomore, I was doing pretty well, and kind of realized out of nowhere that I was actually very fast. Like I didn't even know it until like I was when I was younger, and then I think when I was growing through middle school, I kind of when I was going through a growth spurt, like just my muscles weren't working the same. I just wasn't as fast, I guess. And then sophomore year came around and I realized like, oh shit, I'm actually really fast. And so I did a 60-yard dash for baseball. That's like equivalent to the 40-yard dash in football. That's just how they measure speed for the most part. And I got a really good time. And I was working out at a place that had some track coaches, and they were like, oh, you should definitely do track. And I was like, well, it's the same season as baseball. I can't really do that. And so they timed me on the 60-yard dash though, and I got a really good time. I got like 6.56. And this was now heading into my junior year, and my first junior year, as I'll get to in a second. I had 2 junior years. But anyway, that got me starting to think about, oh, maybe, I'm good at baseball and I'm very fast, so maybe I can use that to help myself get into college. Maybe I can play baseball in college, something I had not thought about at all in my life. I'd never thought about playing a sport in college until I realized that I was very fast and pretty good at baseball and could probably use my speed to, show how much potential I had. And a lot of times college coaches will see someone with a really strong tool, like, a pitcher with a really good arm. Maybe they're not really good right now, but because they have that potential, they'll be able to train them and teach them. So basically that's how I was with speed. Like I was pretty good at baseball. Like I was a good hitter, a good fielder, but I was really fast. And that is what got me thinking about playing baseball in college. So I was in Minnesota at the time, and I played, my sophomore year was on like our JV team. And then junior year, I made varsity, but I didn't play very much. And when I got like pinch hits and like I would pinch run and stuff, but kind of funny that I ended up playing Division I baseball, given where I was at my junior year of high school. And so after that year, And so after that year, my junior year of high school, I played on a summer baseball team that was a travel team. We went to tournaments where college baseball coaches were to like get recognized by coaches. And I was getting some looks, mostly by D3 schools though, not exactly where I wanted to go. And for some background, I basically just wanted to use baseball to get into the best college that I could. For like the ultimate goal would be going to an Ivy League school and playing baseball there. And I was getting looks from, not because Ivy League schools are all Division I, so I was getting looks from more Division III schools, but like still really good schools like Johns Hopkins. But I wasn't necessarily crazy about those schools in itself. Like imagining myself not playing baseball and just going to that school, I was like, I don't know if that's necessarily a great fit for me. So I started looking into, I forget how it originally came about, but I started looking into boarding schools. And like typically on the East Coast, like that's where I wanted to go to school, was on the East Coast. Like again, ultimate goal was going to an Ivy League school. And so I started looking into boarding schools, basically found one that a family friend had been going to. And a lot of times when kids go to boarding schools, they repeat a year. So I had already been through my junior year and basically was going to repeat my junior year, do junior year again to get an extra year to get my test scores up and get recruited by college coaches and basically like get better, get bigger, get stronger, faster potentially. So that is what I ended up doing. I ended up leaving that school I was talking about before, Benilde St. Margaret's, that I really enjoyed. And it was, up until that point, one of the most difficult decisions of my life to leave at school. But I knew long term it was what was best for me, and ended up being correct by that. So, real quick on the boarding school, like, it was okay. It was all boys, which kind of sucked, but it was in northwest corner of Connecticut, and kind of in the middle of nowhere. So very, uh, and it was in the northwest corner of Connecticut, kind of in the middle of nowhere. It was an okay experience. Met some very good friends. Wasn't crazy about it, but I knew that it was probably the right decision for me. And so fast forward through my junior year, and the following summer after my second junior year, I am playing very, very well. I'm having a really good summer playing, getting looks from a lot of different schools this time around, more so Division I schools. I'm hitting really well. I was playing center field at the time and getting all the looks. And finally, at a tournament that I went to, I ended up playing really well. And that's where University of Pennsylvania Coach Yurkow was at that tournament. This was summer of 2013, and I had a really good game that he saw initially, and then he kept watching me and had just kept playing very well. And so basically talked to him at that tournament. He said, yeah, we're interested, would love to have you for a visit. Ended up visiting, loved the school, loved that it was like in a city but still had its own campus. It's in Philadelphia, just outside downtown, and basically fell in love with the school. I kind of knew that's where I wanted to go. So that was good, visited, and then he said, okay, cool, like, we'll be in touch. So didn't get an offer at the visit necessarily, but a few weeks later, he called me, and it's kind of funny story. I was at a Brown baseball camp because I kept going to recruiting stuff, even though I was, knew that I wanted to go to Penn. I hadn't formally gotten an offer yet. So I was at a Brown baseball camp, and I was playing pretty well there too. So I was talking to the Brown coaches and Yale coaches and a few other schools, and who would end up being my head coach at Penn, John Yurkow, called me, and I was in a Brown dorm room at this tournament, or at this recruiting camp, and he basically offered me while I was sitting in a Brown dorm room, and I said yes. I wanted to go there. Still had one more day at the camp. Ended up the next day, like, playing really well because I just didn't give a fuck at all, which is kind of a good mindset to have in a lot of things. Like, typically, the less you care about something, the easier it is to do, the better you perform. So, kind of funny, ended up committing to Penn in a Brown dorm room. The next day, coaches were, talking to me a lot. I didn't tell them right then and there that I had committed to Penn already. They found out later, but that is how I ended up getting recruited to Penn. Fast forward to that fall, I got recruited that summer of 2013 in July. I committed, and then fast forward to September, I was playing thirds soccer, it was called, basically like a club soccer. This is my senior year of high school at Salisbury, that boarding school I was at. I had committed to Penn, so I was set with college, and I tore my ACL playing soccer on this. It's called thirds. It's basically a level below JV for kids who are just like messing around. Basically, it's like pickup soccer. So tore my ACL. Didn't impact my commitment to Penn at all. They kept that commitment, but that was tough. I missed my senior year of baseball, and basically was good by the following summer. And yeah, and then ended up going to Penn. Didn't really play much my freshman year, played more my sophomore year, kind of split time, and then started center field my junior and senior year. Penn was a really, really great experience for me. I really enjoyed it. Wouldn't have traded that experience for the world. It was pretty tough at times, balancing a pretty rigorous course load with playing a sport. Time management was something that time management was something that I had to work on a lot, got better at it, but it was tough, but again, wouldn't have traded that experience for the world. And so that is basically my schooling past. After college, I graduated without. So after college, once I graduated college, I started looking into jobs basically summer after. So I graduated college 2018, May of 2018. Started applying to jobs. I knew I wanted to be in New York City, and I knew I wanted to be at a smaller company. So I basically just went on a bunch of job websites and searched startup in New York, applied to a bunch of jobs, ended up going through a bunch of interview processes, got 2 final round interviews at 2 smaller advertising companies, got offers from both of them, ended up choosing the one. It's a company called Mighty Hive. I still work there, coming up on, 2.5 years. I still work there 2.5 years later. And I still work there 2.5 years later, still enjoy my job. It's been a very good experience, have learned a lot. So I lived in New York. My job started September 2018, lived there until COVID hit, March 2020. And then I went down to my parents' apartment in Tampa, Florida, stayed there for quarantine, ended up coming back to New York in the fall of 2020 for a few months. And then my parents have a house, which I'm in right now, in Utah. So I ended up, because I love skiing, I ended up going there for the winter starting in November and have lived here. It's now May 2nd, 2021. So have been here from November until right now. And I actually am leaving here next week, driving to Tampa with my girlfriend, Taylor, and my dog, because my dog, Chloe, she is a 9-year-old chocolate lab. We don't put her on planes, so we drive her wherever we're going. So driving next weekend to Tampa. And that basically brings me to today. So I do want to go back a little bit and get into more of my mental health, spiritual journey, and just give some background on that. So for me, my background is basically I experienced a decent amount of social anxiety starting in high school through some of college, and I'll tell a couple stories along the way, but basically at a high level, just worried a lot about what people thought of me, rarely lived in the present moment. Okay, so that was a quick background on my life, where I've been, what I've done for the most part. Now I want to backtrack and get into a little bit of my mental health, spiritual journey that basically has led me to a lot of things in my life. And I am very grateful that I went through all of that, even though it sucked going through, was not enjoyable at all. I would never have created the TikTok account that I have, been able to grow it, YouTube, what my Instagram is now, and now starting a podcast without having gone through those things, because I never would have understood what it's like to go through some level of anxiety, So I'm now very grateful for it. Wasn't super enjoyable at the time, going through it for years, but I learned a lot, and I am now grateful that I'm able to help people with going through it, basically. So uh, I experienced a lot of social anxiety through high school and into college, and it wasn't probably super noticeable to a lot of people. It was like high functioning social anxiety. And it was basically at a high level, I just worried a lot about what people thought of me, rarely lived in the present moment, always living either in the past or the future, but mostly the future, just worrying about what might happen, going through what if scenarios, very much identified with my mind, not understanding that I am not my mind, I am not my thoughts, I'm simply the one that can hear them, which is something I learned years later and has helped me a ton, that concept alone. But so through high school, basically just so through high school, I was very quiet. For anyone listening now who went to high school with me, I'm sure you'll be like, not like pretty surprised that I have any content and talk as much as I do, because I was quiet as fuck. Like, I rarely talked, and it wasn't that I was necessarily an introvert or that my mind was quiet. Like, my mind had a lot of fucking things to say. I was just so concerned with, it wasn't even people necessarily liking me. Like, that was a big part of it. I just wanted people to like me, but it was more so than that, that I didn't want people to dislike me. So I didn't ever make any waves. I rarely spoke my mind. I was just so concerned and identified with my mind that I was worried about what might happen if I, start being my true self and start living the way that I want to live, because I was just so concerned with the opinions of others for the most part, and identified with my mind. As I've mentioned, I rarely lived in the present. I didn't even understand the concept of the present, and basically went through high school feeling like that, and into a lot of college. College just like kind of naturally got better, but it still wasn't great. And then it wasn't until towards the end of college I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Still to this day, probably my favorite book. I highly recommend anyone read it. So that book at a high level is basically just about the present moment, explaining that the now, the present moment, is the only thing we ever have had, and ever will have. And it's a very logical concept that makes a lot of sense once you start to understand it more. But at the time, and the first time I read that book, I had no idea what it was talking about. Like, I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't get it. The second time I read it basically 3 times in a row. And first time, didn't really understand it at all. Second time, I started to understand it a little bit more. And third time, I started incorporating it into my life and like practicing what it teaches. And that's when my life really started to change. I started being more present. I started meditating. I started being really the observer of my mind rather than identifying with it. I began to finally understand that I'm not my mind, that internal dialogue, that voice in my head isn't me. It's basically, my subconscious, and it's basically my subconscious programming and other people's voices that have been put in my head, and just fake worries. And the thing about your mind is that it can't live in the present moment. It can only live in the past and the future. And you can only live in the present moment. You, who you are as the watcher, the observer of your mind, the awareness behind all of your thoughts and emotions, cannot live in the past and the future. You, truly who you are, can only live in the present. So as I started to become more present and living in the present moment and not living in my mind so much, I started to become more fully myself, because that is who I truly was. And I started to enjoy life more, be grateful to just be able to experience being a human, not worrying so much about what people thought. And further than that, realizing that people aren't actually thinking about me as much as I thought they were. And that in itself freed me a lot. Just like, if I, like, it's funny because you don't really think about this that much, but you're so consumed with your own life all the time, but then you simultaneously worry about what other people are thinking. So it's this sort of paradox that you're only thinking about yourself, but you think everyone else is thinking about you. Like, you don't think everyone's just thinking about themselves too, just like you are. But in reality, like, they're focused primarily on their own lives too. Like, they don't have the mental capacity to like worry about your life also, or judge you. Like, you make, say for example, like, you're someone who makes to-do lists the night before you go to bed for the next day. Like, do you ever put someone else's life, like, to-dos on your to-do list? No, it's all things that you want to do. So it's interesting that we think that people are thinking about us and judging us so much, when in reality it's like, yeah, don't give a fuck what people think, but also just realize that they're not thinking about you very much at all. And further than that, even, I think about death a lot. This is something I'll get into more probably in other episodes. I don't know how much longer this episode is going to be, but basically, death is something I think about a lot. Like, one day you're going to be old. You're going to be old and wrinkly, and you're not going to be able to do things that you've always wanted to do. And typically people don't do things they want to do, not because they can't, like, not because they don't have the money to do it. It's because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being embarrassed. They're afraid of what their friends from home, their friends from college are going to say about them being fully themselves, and kind of going out on a limb to do things deep down they know they want to do, but they've always been too afraid to, because they don't want to rock the boat. So there's an exercise that I've gone through for a couple years now, and this is going to lead into what started me on social media. So basically, this exercise is something I do in the morning after I meditate. It's basically my morning routine when it comes to meditation. Is I will watch my breath, basically, breathe in through my nose, out through my mouth. As thoughts come up, which they inevitably will all the time, I just bring my attention back to my breath. And it's helped me further understand that I'm not my mind, because even though I'm not trying to think, thoughts keep coming up. So over time, the benefit, I think one of the biggest benefits of meditation, is that you realize that you are not thinking those thoughts. These thoughts just happen. They just come up out of your subconscious. And because you are watching your breath, trying to watch your breath, and these thoughts keep coming up, you realize, like, oh, I'm not thinking these. I must not be my thoughts. I must not be my mind. I am simply the one that can hear them. I am simply the one that's aware of them. And so basically, when I meditate, I watch my breath. Thoughts come up, always constantly coming up. As I catch myself thinking, I just bring my attention back to my breath. Do that over and over. Then I go through some positivity. Affirmations. I am confident, or sometimes I use the first person. Andrew is confident. Andrew is at peace. Andrew is present. Andrew is patient. Andrew is everything. And what I mean by that is the universe simply experiencing itself as we all are. Looking at a high level, like thinking about the universe, one, we're basically on this tiny little speck in the universe, like, which helps me, like, revolving around a sun among billions of other suns in a galaxy, among billions of other galaxies, in a galaxy among billions of other galaxies, which helps me not get so worked up about certain things, because we are pretty fucking significant in the scheme of the universe. But looking at the universe at a high level, like, everything in it is the universe. That includes us. And the feeling of separateness, of the fact that we are just a human separate from everything else, an individual me, is an illusion. It's basically the greatest illusion there has ever been. And it's because a few thousand years ago we became self-aware. At least this is my understanding. Like, I don't know, I'm just a fucking 25-year-old. I don't know, I'm just a fucking 25-year-old kid who might not know anything, but this is my understanding, at least, is that a few thousand years ago we became self-aware. We started to have this internal dialogue. We started to think that we are a self, have a sort of self-consciousness, as opposed to just being the universal consciousness, kind of like how animals are. Like, animals don't get worried, they don't get anxious about the future or regret something they did in the past. They're always living in the present moment. And that's basically how we were until we developed self-consciousness. I don't exactly know how, but we did. And basically that turned into this illusion of separateness, this illusion of self, which I'll get into. I'll talk about more in another video. Honestly, I don't understand it fully. Like, I probably can't go into depth like crazy about it, but that is something that I have learned about as well. I don't remember where I was with this. Oh yeah, so basically when I meditate, go through all these things, oh yeah, and positivity affirmations like Andrew is confident, Andrew is at peace, Andrew is present, Andrew is patient, Andrew is everything. And I'll go through that, understanding that I am the universe, simply experiencing a human being. I'm not a human being experiencing the universe. I am the universe itself. And then I get into some gratitude affirmations, like things that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful to have 2 arms and 2 legs. I'm grateful for my family, friends, loved ones, dog, girlfriend. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to experience being a human being, to experience having this time on Earth, and just enjoy it to its fullest. I'm grateful. And yeah, so that's basically what my morning meditation is like. And then after that, which I was talking about before, how I sort of got into content, was this exercise where I go through my life. So right now I'm 25. I go through, sometimes I skip ahead 5 years. So like I feel myself being 30, 35, 40, 45, and then up to 90, 95, 100. And then I'm 100 years old and I feel myself being 100. And I'll close my eyes when I do this, but I'll really, really feel myself being 100. Like, I'll put myself in that shoes. I'll put myself in 100-year-old me's shoes and feel wrinkly, feel old, feel like I have much less energy. And I spend a minute or two just getting into that feeling. And then after this, I'll go through different variations. Sometimes I'll just imagine dying and being buried and looking at my gravestone and realizing that the world continues going on, and realize that the world continues moving despite me now being dead. So at the end of the day, like, our lives aren't incredibly significant and they don't really matter that much at the end of the day. So it, at least for me, and it's nihilism that I believe for the most part, like optimistic nihilism. I think it's nihilism. I don't even fucking know how to pronounce it, but at the end of the day, like, nothing really matters on a grand scale. Like, our lives and us in the scheme of the universe don't really matter very much, which is, I think, a great thing, because it allows us to choose what matters to us. Like, if you enjoy going on long walks, like, nothing's stopping you from going on long walks every day. If you enjoy reading, nothing's stopping you from reading. Like, you have the choice to choose what matters to you, and so you have the freedom to do those things. So going back, and I apologize, I know I'm jumping around a lot. Hopefully you're able to follow this. But I basically imagine that I'm 100 years old. I'm old, I'm wrinkly, I'm tired, I don't have much energy. And I think what do I regret about my life? So I am 100-year-old me looking back. What do I regret about my life? What do I wish that I had done and now I can't do because I'm too old, probably going to die pretty soon? What do I regret? So I actually started doing this exercise a couple years ago, and basically the only thing that ever came up for me was I regretted not creating more content. And I didn't have a specific thing for that, just like I regretted not posting things that I was interested in on Instagram, on YouTube, and I started doing it probably even before TikTok started. And now, obviously, TikTok, that's where my biggest following is. But I would imagine and think about what I regretted. And I don't remember where I first heard about this exercise or if it's just something that kind of evolved for me over time. But feeling myself being 100, imagining what I regretted. I did this for years before I started posting content, and the only thing that would come up was I regretted not creating more content. And I still wouldn't do it because I was still afraid of how people would judge me. I was afraid of, not doing a good job, of failing at it. But the primary thing was the judgment of others, like how my friends, how other people would react, because I was so still caught up in worrying about what people thought. And that was kind of the last hurdle I overcame in starting to create more content. So basically went through that exercise for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then finally, I was like, I have thought about this every single morning. Like, I know for a fact that I'm going to regret not creating more content. And I got to a point that I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I know I'm going to regret this. How am I still not doing it? So finally pulled the trigger and started creating content. And now I'll get into, just probably in the last couple minutes here, my background getting into creating content. So it is now May 2021. I started creating content July of 2020, and basically just started with a YouTube video, a day in the life YouTube video. It's still on my YouTube, my first YouTube video. It's pretty long, pretty boring, but I filmed it. Pretty boring, but I filmed most of it early in the morning. It was like my morning routine, and then into my day, and just like talking a little bit about my life. And so feel free to go watch that as well, and make sure you subscribe if you do check out my YouTube. But once so anyway, I made that vlog, and I hadn't posted it yet, and I was talking to a couple of my buddies, Jake Levison and Daniel Halevi. Shout out to you guys if you're listening. Hopefully you listen to my podcast. But anyway, I was talking to them about my vlog, and they were like, oh, you better have some like weird shit in there. Like, like we know. And they were basically like, oh, you better have some like funny, weird shit in there. Like, being yourself, they know I'm fucking weird. Like, sometimes I'll send them videos of me shitting. I'm gonna cut this part, I think. I don't think I'm gonna talk about that. It's not actually me shitting, it's like my face when I'm shitting and the sound. So if they ever get a video of me on Snapchat, they usually just don't even watch it. But anyway, I digress. They were like, you better have some funny, weird shit in there. And I was like, I really don't. Like, it's actually pretty boring. And so I was thinking of things that I could include to add into my video. And I thought of that scene in Dodgeball where White Goodman, who Ben Stiller plays, is sitting at his desk, and he has a donut in front of him, and he has his nipples clamped, and he's basically using, it's like self-aversion therapy, where he has a donut in front of him, but like he's trying to train himself to not want it. So anytime he goes to bite it, he like shocks his nipples. I thought that was a pretty funny scene. So I don't know why that came to my mind, but it did. And so I recreated that scene, and it was the second. So I used it as the intro of my YouTube video, and then I had the video, and it was like, 20 seconds. And I had a TikTok account because I had actually the first content I didn't make wasn't in July. It was in June during quarantine. because I had heard Gary Vee talking about TikTok so much. So I was like, oh, I might as well just like create an account. And I posted a video. It was like the French toast recipe that I really like. It's Greg Doucette's Anabolic French Toast. I put that on my TikTok. Didn't do anything. Got like maybe a couple hundred views. And so I had a TikTok account, made this intro of me eating a donut with my nipples clamped for my YouTube video, for my YouTube vlog. And I was like, oh, I have the video, might as well post it on TikTok. So I posted on TikTok, didn't even think twice that it would, do well. And then I'm talking to my sister later that night. I posted it maybe midday. And she was like, Andrew, your TikTok that you posted is kind of blowing up. It has like 10,000 views and like a bunch of likes, like a really good like to view ratio. And I'm like, what the fuck is even a like to view ratio? Like, I didn't know anything about TikTok. She was like, yeah, it's a good thing. And then as we were talking, we talked for a while, like 30 minutes, and she looked again. She was like, oh my gosh, it's like really blowing up. It has like, 40,000 views. And fast forward to a couple days later, it had gone viral and it got like over 2 million views. And basically from that, I got a couple thousand followers. And once I had that, I was like, oh shit, I actually have some people who follow me. I might as well just start posting other things I'm interested in. So I just started posting a bunch of different videos on fitness, on like quotes that I really like, some quotes from Eckhart Tolle and Alan Watts. One being one of my favorites, which ended up doing pretty well also. It got a couple 100,000 views. It's in life, there is no good or bad, no winners and losers, only things happening, always as they are, exactly as they should have always been. So the worst thing you can do is take life too seriously. That is one of my favorite quotes by Alan Watts. So I posted that one did pretty well. And basically from there, just like had, I don't know, maybe 6,000 followers at that point. And I was like, all right, well, I've already decided that I'm going to start creating more content. So I might as well focus some of it on TikTok. So I started doing that and realized that TikTok is by far the best place, far beyond Instagram and YouTube, the best place to organically grow, like get organic reach with your videos. So that became my focus. I was still doing some YouTube stuff. I was also at this point posting a bunch of recipe videos on my Instagram, which are still in my Instagram story highlights. That was another one of the early things I was doing content-wise. So if you had followed me on Instagram for a while, you probably remember me doing a bunch of those. That was basically like me practicing creating content, because Instagram, you don't get organic reach from your stories. You get a little bit maybe from posts, but nothing compared to TikTok. So that was basically me practicing posting content, practicing not caring what people thought, like, kind of getting out of my comfort zone, filming myself talking, and obviously doing recipes, doing things on camera. It's basically just me practicing. So from there, I'll just give, a quick synopsis of the ups and downs I've had through creating content. So that was back summer 2020, July 2020. Started posting a lot more. My account started to grow, had, I think by November, like 40,000 followers. And then but I think by November, about 40,000, maybe 45,000 followers. But I had gotten kind of discouraged because in September, I think, I set some goals of getting like 50,000 followers by October and then 100,000 followers by the end of 2020. And the issue with that goal was that it was out of my control. I had set a goal of gaining followers when it's not I'd set a goal of gaining a certain amount of followers when it's not actually, I can't control who follows me. I can only control what content I put out, basically, and how often I put it out. So I had set these goals, these numerical goals, and because I didn't reach it, like I didn't reach 50,000 followers by the end of October, I got kind of discouraged and I stopped posting for a while. And it's like a few weeks I barely posted at all. So my account kind of stayed at around 45,000 followers for a month or so. And then end of November, around Thanksgiving, is when I moved out to Utah to my family's house where I was going to stay for the winter, because I've been working remote in my job since March of 2020, so I can kind of live wherever I want. I was still paying rent in New York, but my parents didn't make me pay rent in Utah, so I was able to come out here. And basically, when I came out here, what I decided was that I was not going to set numerical goals anymore. I was simply going to set goals that are within my control. So I set a goal of posting at least one video on TikTok a day and going live on TikTok for at least 10 minutes a day. So these are two things that are very much in my control, and I stuck to that. I think I missed maybe 1 or 2 days from November through February, and my account grew from around 45,000 to, I think, end of February I was at around 140 or 150,000. In January, I had a couple of videos go viral, and basically end of 2020, I'd gotten to 60,000 followers. And then through January, within a couple of weeks, I got to over 100,000. So basically doubled my account in a few weeks, but I had just stuck to that goal of posting one video a day, going live for 10 minutes a day. And fast forward to end of February, early March, I basically gotten burned out. Because I'm a very disciplined person. So when I set that goal of posting one video a day, going live for 10 minutes a day, it became difficult for me not to do that. And I felt bad if I didn't do that. But it got to a point that I was so consumed with creating content, and I was and especially the type of content I create with like mental health focused, I was exuding a lot of energy and putting a lot of energy out to try and help people, but I had kind of lost touch with myself and my well-being and, being present in my life. I basically didn't fully realize how much of my mental capacity I was putting towards creating content and trying to help people. So I realized this though, which was good. I'm fairly self-aware. So I was able to catch that I was feeling this way. And I basically had broken down to my parents one day, I think it was towards the end of February, and was crying to them on the phone about how I just wasn't feeling great, felt like I wasn't being very present in my life, was just so focused on being live on TikTok, creating TikTok videos, responding to comments, responding to DMs. There's an endless amount of comments and DMs for me to respond to, and it was just getting to be too much. So I basically decided that I was going to go off of social media fully, delete TikTok and Instagram for at least a week, wasn't exactly sure how long it was going to be, and just not be on my phone as much, take time for myself, be more present in my life, just be present with my family, because that was a big thing too, is I just felt like I wasn't living in the moment. I wasn't being present despite preaching that, because I was so focused on the things that I was preaching it on, creating TikTok videos and whatnot. So I ended up taking a week and a half off, didn't touch social media. And it was funny because when I deleted them on that first day, I actually felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I physically felt better because because I didn't even realize how much of my mental capacity was being directed towards social media until I deleted them. And it just felt really, really good, because it was no longer something I was thinking about all the time. And because I had, manifested certain things, it was gaining more followers on social media. It was just part of my morning journaling and manifestations. I am grateful for having 500,000 followers on TikTok. I had been feeling like I had already had that, which helps, get to that point, because feeling precedes reality. But I'll get to that in another episode. So basically my subconscious just been constantly churning out video ideas and thinking about things directed towards, what would help me gain more followers, which is putting out more content. So once I deleted them, I felt, a bunch of mental capacity open up for other things in my life. I just physically felt better, and it was exactly what I needed. And so when I came back to social media, it was 10 days that I took off. I was a lot more balanced with my content creation. I wasn't going live 10 times a day like I was before. I wasn't holding myself to this standard of creating a video every day. I was basically allowing myself to, if I didn't have any video ideas one day, I didn't go out and like try to think about them. I was okay with not posting a video every single day. And then Sundays, when I had a bunch of ideas, I would just film all of them and post all of them that day. In the past, if I had a bunch of ideas one day, I would film all of them and then space them out so that I knew that I would at least have one video to post every day. I stopped worrying about that so much. So my content, I think, just had a better energy about it, a more natural flow about it. I wasn't being super rigid with the structure of my videos. Before I'd taken this break, I was starting every single video with "What if I told you?" It kind of became my theme of my videos, and I thought that was like really important for growth, when in reality it was just, the messages I was putting out was more important. I think that helped, but after that I was just like, I didn't want to be known as the "What if I told you" guy. I wanted to be known as Andrew Renane, who was being himself and posting things that he wanted to post about and trying to help people. So that's what I started doing. I started if I had a video idea, I would just film it kind of on the spot. If I was on a walk with my dog, rather than writing it in my notes and saving it so that I could post it with the typical background that I use, I would just film it while I was walking. And it helped a lot. It just became a supplement to my happiness, as opposed to where I was deriving, a lot of my happiness and purpose that I was feeling before. So anyway, and since that happened, got back into it early March, my account has grown a ton. I think it was at around 170,000 followers, and through April, it has grown to now, I don't know, 460,000 followers is where I'm at now, and my Instagram's grown a lot. So yeah, that's basically my background on my life, on my mental health journey, on my content creation journey. Again, this is the first episode of my podcast. I'm sure I'll have lots more episodes in the future, and it'll be funny looking back at this, filming on this $26 microphone from Amazon. But I hope you enjoyed listening to a little bit of background on myself, learning a little bit about myself. Future episodes will be more focused on a specific topic or theme. I will eventually have guests on my podcast, and I'm very excited for the future. And thank you all for listening. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you in the next episode. So anyway, thank you all for listening. I look forward to discussing more things in the next episode. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Talk to you later. Peace.